Hello everyone, welcome to an unboxing and review of the Seiko Street Series Solar Tuna. This model is the SNE535. Today I'm wearing my Seiko Arnie, the H558, the original from the 80s. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. This is a pretty standard Seiko box. Nothing really to write home about, but that's it's not Seiko's strong point with their more affordable models. So, box is pretty standard cardboard. Nice bit of texturing going on, but nothing special. Open it up, and the watch comes on a nice little pillow. So let's put that aside for a second. Down here you have standard Seiko. If I can get a grip on it. There we go. Standard Seiko warranty / instructions manual. There's the receipt. It's all pretty standard stuff. It's big because they put it in a bunch of different languages, as you can see down there. No real point reading the instructions, let's be honest here. So, put that down there. And here's the warranty. So, that's the box. Not very complicated. So here's the main attraction. Let's get it off its pillow over here. And there we go. I chose the green, the forest green. Well, reminds me of a lot of field watches. Gives a more military vibe to it. And it's just nice. So, let's start with the movement. This is the Seiko Caliber V157. If you're familiar with the Seiko Solar Tunas, you might be familiar with this movement. Pretty standard for a Seiko higher end quartz. You get around 10 months of power reserve once it's fully charged, which you can do just leaving it outside for a day. This isn't my first time unboxing this watch, as you may be able to tell by the little mark there. It's already been given a bit of character, but that's fine because these are meant to take a beating. So, movement, it's nice, as you can see. The second hand is hitting all the indices as it should be. Sometimes with Seiko quality control, that's a bit of a rare thing to find, but this one does it nicely. So the case is pretty standard for a quartz tuna. Let's compare it to my Arnie. As you can see, you get 4 o'clock crown, as with most of the bigger tunas. Now, speaking of size, this is 47 millimeters in diameter. No point of saying with or without the crown here, because crown is pretty much flush with the case, which is one of the main attractions of the Tuna and Seiko divers in general for me. It's just so comfortable to wear. You don't get the crown digging into you. It's lightweight. But it's got a nice heft to it. I should explain that. When I looked at these solar Tunas, I kind of assumed it would feel like the Arnie. And for those of you who've never handled a watch like this, it's, I wouldn't say cheap feeling. It's just lightweight, and, well, take that as you will. But I haven't handled any other solar Tunas, so I can't make this claim 100%, but this, at least this one, it has a nice heft to it. It doesn't feel like a cheap watch. And, I mean, no Tuna really should. So here's the case back. And you can see that Tuna can construction. So for those of you not in the know, this outer shroud is plastic, and it essentially protects the case and the bezel from being turned while diving. One thing to mention about the bezel on this, the majority of Tunas, let me get out my sawtooth. As you can see on this one too, they have a certain style of knurling to them. Not knurling. As a knife person, I want to say jimping, but I'm not 100% sure what the term for this would be. But anyway, as you can see, comparing the two, on the Street Series Tunas, you get this wonderful coin edge bezel. It's just so nice to turn. I'm actually blown away by it. It's, I'd say, within my collection, it's probably the best bezel action I've ever felt. And while we're on the bezel, the insert for this is, I believe, aluminum. It's a solid piece of metal, but what's really nice about it, and what really adds value to the Street Series, is the fact that it's all machined. There's no paint on it, it's just machined metal. As well, my camera probably isn't good enough to pick it out, but within the bezel insert, there's a really nice finishing to it. It's like machined in these very thin lines, and on top of that you get, I'm not sure if it's anodized on or what, but the forest green kind of flashes with the light, but it's very subtle when it's not being hit by the light as well. Instead of having like the SKX or most watches where you'll have the demarcation for 15 minutes, this watch has that, but as you can see, it's a physical other level to the bezel, and it's black, fully PVD'd, instead of being that flashy green. Not that it's flashy, so to say, but the way it flashes. And one more nice piece of green detailing on this is the dial. Now, if you can see, as with the bezel, when the light hits it in a certain way, it looks almost flat, like a standard Seiko dial, like it's one color, but you hit it with the light just right. My apologies there. And you can see it has an almost pavement-like texture to it. Now, as well, you can see on the strap, most Seiko rubber straps, they have this texture on the inside of the band, and then this texture on the outside. So it's kind of cool they flip that around to match the texturing of the dial. But this strap is probably the most comfortable rubber strap I have ever felt in my life. It's soft, it's pliable, it just works perfectly. My only complaint about this watch, some of you may be familiar with this handset. Seiko has used this plenty of times before on their other prospects, however you pronounce it, watches, and you can tell they don't fully fit with the dial. The silver outline of the hands in particular is what annoys me. It just doesn't fit with the watch itself. If they had painted the border of the hands white, like you see on the second's hand, it would have just kicked it up a notch in terms of attention to detail. But at a retail price of $450, really that's a minor complaint, because the level of detail on this watch, as well as the sturdy construction, the fact that it's a Seiko Tuna, I haven't really had this for too long, so I can't do a long-term reliability and durability report, but I'm assuming, based on my experiences with previous Tunas, that it'll just be a no-nonsense, never let you down kind of watch. But, oh yes, one more complaint. The crystal is mineral / hardlex, which is what Seiko likes to call their mineral crystals. It's not the end of the world, but I mean, Seiko's been doing that for how long? And really, you're starting to see so many micro brands at this price point. Sapphire is just, it's expected of watch brands at this price point, almost. So, again, minor complaint, but overall this watch is just fantastic. I really appreciate the fact that they tried something a bit more fun with the Tuna. That's one of the reasons I love my Sawtooth, because it's just a bit of a wild addition to the Tuna line. They decided to go a bit above and beyond what a tool watch can be and have some fun with it. So here it is on the wrist. Let's put this down. Let's just do some nice angles here. So yeah, this is a very big watch at 47 millimeters, but if you are familiar with the Tuna line in any capacity, you'll know the Arnie, pretty much the same size, Sawtooth, pretty much the same size. So when you hear the Seiko Tuna case sizes, don't be put off, because what makes a watch wear big is the lug length. And as you can see on these, the lugs are pretty much flush with the case. So despite being so big, I recommend you try one first, obviously, before you commit to them as a purchase, but they're very easy to wear, and this is just one of the most comfortable watches I've ever worn. I'd say G-Shocks are pretty much on par in terms of wearability. Again, you can have big case, nice comfy rubber strap. The outer is plastic, so they have a very similar feel to them. And the Street Series, the whole point of this line was to incorporate kind of streetwear fashion trends into it. Now, that's not my main motivation for getting this watch, but I think they did a great job on that. And kind of like with the G-Shock streetwear kind of crossovers, you get a little bit of funk to it. It's not your standard, as I said, with with the sawtooth, but I find with these kind of bright tool colors on tool watches, it still kind of feels like a tool watch visually. But when you compare it to something like the Arnie, or even like the standard Solar Tunas, which I don't have, it just feels like a bit more of a fashion watch. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in, when you look at fashion watches, they take kind of stylistic risks, but in terms of watchmaking, they sacrifice that for the fashion forwardness. But with this, you get a tried and proven tool watch that is solidly built, in-house movement, just everything about it's great, really. Aside from those minor complaints, there's just nothing wrong with the watch. So when you have that with elements of fashion watches like this, like the bezel on here, how it's two colors and you have the flash to it, stuff like that, and the green of the strap with the texturing. Again, as with the G-Shocks, that's why I'd say if you're looking for a fashion watch, go for G-Shock. Yeah, I don't have that much more to say to that point. It's just a very fascinating concept to me as someone who has collected tool and vintage watches for a while, to have something I can treat like a tool watch, like a solidly built machine, yet still know it's gonna, I don't want to say it looks fashion forward. I'm not a fashion expert by any means, so take my word with a grain of salt on that. But as with all that, I just think this is a solid package of a watch. And if you're looking for a nice Seiko, but don't want to deal with how harsh some of their Tuna models look, this is a great choice for you. Or if you just appreciate the look of it, you can't really go wrong with this. So yeah, that pretty much concludes my thoughts. Just to list off some more specs quickly. Strap is 22 millimeters, pretty standard for Tunas. Water resistance, as you can see, 200 meters, which is an ISO rating, so I wouldn't really trust it down to that depth, but in terms of swimming, just as a lifestyle watch, think of it more like that. Like the way a G-Shock, you can just do whatever you want to it. I wouldn't throw this at the ground, freeze it, or boil it like people have done with G-Shocks, but as a everyday watch, this is an excellent choice. And that pretty much concludes my thoughts on this, so we'll do some more pillow sounds for the outro. I hope you enjoyed. If you're someone who is looking to buy a Tuna, I'd recommend it, this one, if you like it. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and thank you for watching. Have a good one.